Everybody, thank you for being here. I hope that you have a seat or something that is resembling comfort. Welcome to Bank of Baroda Baitak venue for this very exciting session, Ikigai, the Japanese secret to a long and happy life. I won't keep you waiting. We'll get our speakers up on stage. Francesc Miralles in conversation with Nilanjana S. Roy.
Good afternoon. It's just so wonderful to be here with Francesc. I think that many of you have already read the book or know about Ikigai. How many of you know about Ikigai already? Wonderful. And how many of you don't, just to get a sense of? Okay, we'll go either way with this. I heard about Ikigai first thanks to the book that you did with Hector. And it struck me that a word that has actually been in existence for so many years, since 800 AD or perhaps a little earlier, and the two parts to Ikigai are so beautiful. Iki derives from Ikiru, for life, and Gai is one of those complicated words that seems to have many meanings from many definitions. When you first encountered the word, what did it say to you? And what is your definition of it now? And how did it start to open up its meanings? A second, please. Could I request you at the back to either shut the doors or a little silence for Francesc, if possible? Thank you so much.
Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you very much. And let's start by this nice explanation that you did. Ikigai is a word formed by these two kanjis. Iki is life, gai means worth it. So literally we could translate it as a life worth to be lived, or more freely, purpose of life, mission, the reason why we start every new day. I encountered this word together with Hector for the first time when we were doing our investigation in Ogimi, that is a very little rural village north of Okinawa, and we were there to interview a lot of centennials because Ogimi is the village, is the place in the world with the record World Guinness of longevity. So it's the place with more centennials every 1,000 inhabitants in the world. Then when we were interviewing them to discover the reasons why these people lived so long, one of the common answers was, I have an Ikigai and this brings me motivation to live long.
One of the things that I was asking people who were expressing an interest in the session was how they defined happiness or what would make them happy. And typically people would say things like, there's this boy I really like, and if he liked me back, I would be happy, or if I made more money, I'd be happy, or if I had a different job, I'd be happy. But what you and your research seems to point at is that that's not happiness at all. Viktor Frankl, whom you quote in the book, said that, in effect, it's man's search for meaning, humanity's search for meaning that really defines us. Why is it so important to us to have a central value in life, not even a purpose, but not even a thing that makes you get up in the morning? But why, as humans, do we need so much to know what it is that we're on this planet for?
Yes, this is a very complex question. I think you pointed something very important, and that is, until very recently, people in East and West thought that to be happy, what you needed was to be prosperous, to have abundance. But what we have discovered is that it's not enough to have money, it's not enough to have a good house, to have a good car, to pay yourself a holiday abroad. We can feel melancholic and we can feel sad having all these things. And the Beatles, already in the 60s, they were singing "Can't Buy Me Love." So there are many things that money cannot buy. Money cannot buy friends, love, and of course, money cannot give you a purpose. And we are now in a moment of very interesting change in people, and that's that the generation of our parents were striving for money, trying to have a good salary, trying to have a house, to give us an education, to give us some comfort, and the job was not so important. My own parents, for instance, my mother, all her life was sewing. They were very humble people, and my mother worked very hard from 6 in the morning until 10 at night, sewing costumes because she needed to have an extra money to pay us the schools and all the things we needed. And my father was a very simple worker in an office who had the same responsibilities of his life. And they didn't complain. They thought it was the right thing to do, earning money for the family. And the activity, if it's boring, it doesn't happen anything. Nowadays, the new generations, the millennials, don't want that. So they want also to have a meaningful job. They need to have a purpose. They need to see in the world a reflection, a result of what they did. Because of that, purpose now is so important because we have changed the equation somehow. If I have a strong purpose and I discover my talent, I want to have a meaningful life through that, and the money will come in the end.
I love it that the two tools that you say are essential for discovering your Ikigai, your purpose in life, your meaning out here, the two tools that you mention most often are intuition and curiosity.
Yes.
And why is this so? I mean, why do we is it that we don't know ourselves well enough?
I think you have mentioned two very powerful tools. I know a lot of people in Europe. It's said that Germans are square-headed, but it's only a topic. Also, in Spain, in Catalonia, I know a lot of people who need to have everything organized. They need to know exactly what will happen in this month, what will happen in 3 months, what do they buy the holidays 1 year before. So they try to plan life because they are afraid of change. So they think if they have in an agenda, in a calendar, everything that will happen, that changes cannot touch them. But actually, life is totally impossible to predict. It's unpredictable. And if we live with this control freak sense, we are going to suffer a lot. So one thing for the Ikigai is what you say, to let yourself go with the flow, what the musicians say, play by ear. So let's improvise. And curiosity, because the way to your own Ikigai normally doesn't come easily. So you have to try a lot of things in life until you discover what is for you. And if you don't have curiosity, you are not going to see all these ways that can bring you this happiness of finding, that's my thing.
You know, when you say this, I'm thinking of your own life. You started off basically learning many other things, literature, you studied German, you worked in publishing. And at 30, you say somewhere that you weren't happy. None of this, you'd got the job, you were doing all of the things that you were supposed to do. And it didn't bring you happiness. You came to India at 30, that changed things. But did you know, when was the point at which you began to actually live Ikigai? One of the things I love about your book is that it is not just a book of where you're collecting information about best practices. You actually have been living this in many ways for the past 20 years. So where did that come from, and how do you think it's changed you?
Yes, I had so many changes in my life because I didn't know at all what I wanted to do with it. So I changed my studies in university like 3 or 4 times. I was registered in psychology. I didn't start, and then I went to journalism, and 6 months after, I was to English literature, and then to German literature. And my parents, I drove crazy, my parents, because they say, you are changing all the time, you are always starting over, what are you going to do? But because I didn't know, I was in this way of curiosity of proof and mistake, and let's see this, and let's see that, and I was starting over many times. So by that time, when I was in my 20s, the only thing I knew for sure is that I loved traveling. And because of that, I was always working during university to save money and to follow my passion, that was going on a train to some unknown place and to be reading a book and looking through the window, and that was the only thing where I felt in peace with myself. Afterwards, I went to the publishing industry, first as a translator of books, afterwards correcting them, then working as a publisher, and then I discovered that this couldn't make me happy either, because it supposed being 10, 12 hours a day in an office. The human atmosphere was not very good. There were a lot of people angry with their jobs and angry with themselves, and they made us a lot of mobbing also. So it was a kind of hell, and the strange thing was that in this publishing house, we published books about positive thinking, happiness, spirituality, and the people who worked there didn't practice anything of that. Because of that, then I said, I quit my job, I forget my salary, and I want to give up everything and go to India.
That is, what happened in India that put you onto this path as well?
Yes, in India, I got what many other writers, artists, intellectuals have found in their lives. We must think that we were talking about the Beatles. They found great inspiration here, and it influenced very much their music, and it came into Western music through psychedelia and many very interesting movements. So when I came to India, I had first thing, very important, to develop your Ikigai, time. So I was traveling in these trains in which you are 12, 15 hours into the train, looking at humanity coming into the wagon in every stop, the children, the people, the tea sellers. So first of all, I had a lot of time to think, a lot of time to observe, so many different people from different religions, from different social classes. And then I got a lot of inspiration of little adventures of every day, things that happened in the trains, in the hotels, in the streets, with animals, with priests, with sadhus. I was talking with a lot of different people, and then it was the first time in my life that I say, I want to write a novel with all that. And I have wrote today this novel. This novel, the name is Lost in Bombay.
This is the first one that you wrote.
Yes, and it was the first fiction that I wrote in my life, and I think I discovered my Ikigai as a writer being here in India for the first time 22 years ago.
But you also say a really beautiful thing. You say that you change your Ikigai every 10 years or 12 years or so, which means that you reinvent yourself every 10 years or you find a new purpose?
Yes, it's not for everyone. There are people who find one Ikigai, and this Ikigai is like a lighthouse that shows the way forever, for the whole life. And they are very fortunate because every change requires a lot of sorrow, a lot of pains, difficulties, because you must start over again. And there are people who from very young know that they want to be artists, that they want to be writers, that they want to help other people, and it's beautiful if being very young you reach that point. But normally people must try different things until they feel comfortable with their lives. And in my case, I think I had 2 or 3 strong passions before discovering that writing and teaching workshops of Ikigai was something that filled my soul. And who knows, maybe in 20 years I am doing something else. So for me, one lesson of Ikigai is that nothing is forever. Maybe this is okay, and this is giving me power for 5 years of my life, but maybe then something changes in my life and I need to look for another direction, and it's okay like this.
If you look at the heart of Ikigai, you start to see that 2 or 3 concepts come up that frankly we are not taught. I mean, they are common concepts in places like Okinawa and a few other places in the world called the blue zones, which I'd love you to talk about. But those 3 or 4 things seem to be reinvent yourself, live in the moment, live a little more slowly, embrace change, find your flow, and be close to your community, a real community, you know, and continue working well into your 80s and 90s.
Until the end.
Until the end. Wonderful. And I'm just looking around and thinking, how many of us are taught this? What we are taught more is that if we have the right set of things, if we work very hard and we acquire a whole bunch of things, whether that's status or actual possessions, then we'll be fine. But what did you see in the communities that you went to? And by now you've seen Okinawa, and I think you've traveled beyond that as well. In communities that are healthy, that thrive, that have a purpose in life, a common Ikigai, what do you see that marks them out from the rest of the world?
Yes, maybe you have done a very good summary of what were the key points of these people to live so long. Recently, 2 months ago, I was back in Okinawa with Hector, Garcia, the co-author of the book, because we went with National Geographic to shoot part of a documentary. And apart from these key points that you commented, being together with the others in community, having a simple life, living slowly, having an Ikigai, having a purpose every day, a bit of exercise, not eating too much, all the things that are in the book. It was interesting because 2 months ago, being there, an American man in his middle 40s who lives there and he's married to a Japanese woman said, "You that wrote the book, I have read the book too, and you forgot to say one important thing for the long living of all these people on Okinawa." He said, "Think that Okinawa was the place who suffered more the Second World War, because there was the Battle of Okinawa, that it was with army on the fields, and it was 110,000 killed people, many civilians." And he said that nowadays, many Americans live there, they have married local people, and there is no regret at all of the past. And he said, one ultimate secret for these people to live so long and so happily and so relaxed is that they know how to forgive. They have forgiven the past, they have forgiven these soldiers who came here, and they have forgiven themselves. So if you don't have past accounts with negative things, you can live much quieter and much longer, and you can live in the present. If not, you are always looking backwards.
Francis, this is so important, you know, because I think it speaks to us in India, and it speaks to so many other countries going through tension and conflict at this time. I think what moved me about Okinawa was, again, that this peace was so hard won. And it takes a lot of courage, I think, for entire countries and communities to say, yes, you wounded us, you know, yes, your people caused great harm, but for our own peace of mind, we will turn our back on it. When you were in Okinawa, did you talk about that process with people? Did you ask them, how did you arrive at this? How did you make yourself forgive?
Yes, so you mean, how do you bring this philosophy of Okinawa to other places, to a city, to a place like Jaipur or Barcelona? Do you mean that? Yes. Yes. I think the geographical place is not important, because if we go to a little village in India, in Spain, in China. We are going to find also people who live in a harmonious way with the neighbors, who cultivate their own foods, that they live slower, they go with the sun. The problem is that in the cities, we need to have another strategy, because in the cities we live in a permanent state of distraction. And this distraction comes through the social media, through the groups of WhatsApp, noises on the street, negative news, it's going to happen this, it's going to happen that. Then you go to the office, everything is angry, everything is stressed. And it means thousands and thousands of inputs every minute that can overwhelm you. So when you have to find your Ikigai and you live in such a climate of stress, you must start switching things off. For instance, myself, I never read the news. So before, 5 years before, I started the day in front of my computer reading the newspapers to see what happened. But I discovered that it affected a lot my state of mind. So when I was reading of quarrels among politicians, among different parts of the country, the future wars, I don't think it is to be irresponsible, but this affected me in such a way that I couldn't give the best of myself. So to live your Ikigai in the city, you must be very selective with the inputs that come to you and to try to focus in what is important and what is your talent, because if you keep that away from all this noise, then you can develop it and you can give it back to the world and make of this a better planet.
It is absolutely fascinating what you're saying. Sorry, I didn't mean to shut down the applause. Please go ahead. Just a few weeks ago, I was talking to a friend who's a neuroscientist who specializes in addiction recovery. And he said that he's begun to classify the incessant stream of headlines coming at us all the time through WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, everything. He's classifies that now as an addiction. He says at some point of time there's a hook that gets into your system and that won't let you switch off from that constant need to know and to update. And what you're saying is one of the pillars of Ikigai in a sense, which is that in order to come back to yourself, you must also create a space around you, yes? And that space, in a sense, you're saying has to be a real space, which is so very different from the multiple social universes that we are part of. I was also thinking about the book that you wrote on forest walking, because that seems to be another part of it that maybe we're missing in the cities. How do most people in cities improve their connection with nature? Why is it important to us? What is it that holds us together?
Yes. What you mentioned in the end is forest bathing, that the Japanese call Shinrin-yoku, is one solution we have to connect with ourselves and with nature. And the experts say that only once a week even, going to the forest is enough to have a lot of benefits for our health, not only psychologically, reduction of stress, better sleeping, but also even our immune system gets better if we pass one half day a week in the. And what to do if we are in the city and we need to have this space of protection that you say? For instance, one thing we could do is to keep 1 hour a day for something that is strictly personal. So we can work, we can help the friends, the family, go to compromises, go to parties, everything, watch Netflix at night, but we should keep 1 hour a day for ourselves, for something that is meaningful for us. For some people can be writing a diary, a notebook, for another playing an instrument, for another person maybe it's going to a park and having your novel and reading there. So if we keep this oasis for ourselves, from there we can develop a lot of things and we can understand much better the conditions of the life in the city.
May I ask you now what your daily routine looks like today compared to, let's say, 15, 20 years ago? How much has changed?
How is nowadays my routine? It has changed because now I have little time, but my ideal routine, I would say, is waking up a bit before 8 o'clock maybe. Then I am a freak of green tea. I start the day doing a teapot of tea, and then I drink 2 or 3 cups with my 2 cats that live in our house, and they come to the sofa, and then I start maybe with the most creative thing. If I am writing a novel, if I am writing the book, I put it first because, and this is a piece of advice that I give also to writers, don't leave your passion for the end of the day, because in the end of the day, you are very tired. You have had a lot of information. You are intoxicated, that it's a mixture between information and intoxication. You are intoxicated of so many thousands of inputs that you had. So in the beginning, if you can get up 2 hours before your activity, these 2 hours are gold. So I try to write in the morning, and then when I finish that, I answer some emails, and then I start my day. Normally I visit many schools because I have books for children. And also I like, if it's possible, 3 times a week to meet old friends, because this is something that I learned from these old people in Okinawa. They visit friends almost every afternoon, and they join together. And sometimes we are so busy that what is an obligation of work, we do it, or sending a file, or having some professional talk. But we forget these dear people who are with us since we were at school, because we think that there is always time. Sometimes people leave, or things happen, and you wish then to have dedicated more time to these friends. So I put as an Ikigai in my week, meeting 2, 3 friends and having time with them to have a coffee, a beer together, look at the eyes of this dear person, and talk about so many things as possible. Because in the end, when we remember best moments in our lives, it's the ones we spend with these people that we love, with our couple, with our family, with our friends.
All right, these sound like such simple and good things to do. So a question, why do most people have a lot of trouble actually implementing these in our lives? Why is it so hard to make changes that are good for us?
Yes, because we are addicted to activity in a bad way. Let me explain you the difference. When we look at the different interpretations of the word Ikigai, there is one that is being happily busy. But happily busy means doing all the time the things you love. So your hobby, your people, going to nature. But people is always busy, but sometimes we are busy in things that are totally nonsense, like being 2 hours in front of the social media, looking at what happens in Facebook, in Instagram, in Twitter, and we are like hypnotized, and we don't know why we are spending so much time on that. And actually, the psychologists use a Latin word to explain this phenomenon called horror vacui. Horror vacui means fear to emptiness. And what does it mean? That we are busy all the time, but artificially busy with things that many of them we are not so interested, because we are afraid that if we create a space, uncomfortable questions come to us. So if you are never alone with the silence, and you are always looking at something, listening to something, doing something, you don't leave the space. But when you leave the space, maybe then will come these questions that can change your life to say, is this the life I wanted to do? I am following my priorities. I am doing the right things for myself. And sometimes we keep very busy so as not to formulate these questions.
Just looking at this audience, about hundreds of people out here, more listening from outside. A lot of people out here, again, are living good lives, but would like to live better lives, perhaps. Some maybe are just starting out in their journeys. If there are 4 things that you learned in the process of writing Ikigai and after, 3 or 4 things that you really want to share with them.
In the process of writing, for future or present writers that are here, yes. Some of the things we already mentioned. I would say the first thing a writer needs to start a career is attention, focus. But this focus, not only when you are writing. Let's start the process. In the beginning, before you start writing a single line, you need to take the information from reality. And so, a good writer must be a searcher of good stories. And then when you are in the metro, when you are in the bus, when you are walking in the street, instead of looking to your smartphone all the time, you look at the world and you listen to the conversations and you are looking for special stories from the people that can be told in a book and that can be universal. Then this attention, this focus, you put it in your observation of reality, chasing good stories. After that, you must prepare some kind of plan. It's said that there are 2 kinds of writers, the writers of compass and the writers of map. When you write with a compass, it means that you improvise, you write chapter 1, but with not a clear idea of what will happen afterwards. And you follow your inspiration, and what you wrote today will be a clue for what you will write tomorrow. This is very dangerous if you don't have a lot of practice, if you are not Hemingway, because you can get lost easily, or maybe you put a lot of action in a part of your book, and in the second part, maybe it's weaker. So it's good to have a plan, it's good to have a map. And what does it mean? It means that at least if you are writing fiction, to know what happens in the beginning, what happens in the end, how does it finish, this story, and what is the central point in which the story turns. If you know that, you can go filling the different blanks for that. And this focus that we were talking about, it will be very important when you write in the end to have, I would say, a discipline a little bit like people who prepare themselves for running a marathon. To write a book, to write a novel, is a work that needs a lot of persistence, because in the beginning, you are very excited with the idea, you are full of energy, you want to put a lot of things in the paper, but after 1 week, 2 weeks, then other temptations come, and maybe you want to go with this place, you want to go to the cinema, you want to watch Netflix, and you lose the thread. So it's important here to be very strict with yourself. When I started writing this, I was writing here in India, but after I wrote it on hand with a pen in a normal notebook, but when I was transcribing it to the computer, it was always same schedule. In that time I did from 2 to 5 p.m. I was obligating myself to sit in front of the computer and work. So when you are writing in a novel or a book or an essay, you put 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, a sacred time that you are in front of the paper, in front of the computer, even if you don't want to. And then you follow that, and that's the easiest way that your creative flow can come out of you.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Wonderful advice for writers. And I'm going to throw this open to the audience fairly soon, but just to check, because we are talking about Ikigai, we are talking about your purpose in life. How many people in the audience know what their purpose in life is? How many of you are sure about it? Okay. How many of you are not sure about your purpose in life? Francis, you have your work cut out. What advice do you give everyone out here? How do they go about finding their purpose? What's the first steps?
To find your Ikigai?
To find your Ikigai?
Yes. If you don't know yet what is your Ikigai, don't worry. Most people don't know it yet. It's something that we have inside ourselves and that we are going to discover. And I can tell 2-3 ways of finding your Ikigai. First of all, I would say what we were talking before, liberating time. So having a tea with yourself. In this life we give time to so many people that they are asking things from us, and we give time to everybody except for ourselves. So if you want to discover your Ikigai, first thing you need is time, is to create an empty canvas so that new things can appear. So it would be enough, for instance, in even 20 minutes a day that you are with yourself, with a notebook, or in a cafe, or walking in a park, doing what the ancient Greek philosophers did, walking and thinking. So you create a space, you put yourself questions, and your Ikigai will approach to you. Second way is to try as many things as possible. I am sure that everyone who is here has a lot of things that maybe would like to try and didn't do it yet. Then think which things are that. Maybe playing piano, maybe writing your first tale, maybe discovering a new sport, going to a country where you always dreamt that you would like to go there. So try as many, not impossible things, but things that you always wanted to do, and you gave yourself some reason not to do it, because from all this of all this proof and mistakes, it will come in the end something that you will feel that is very, very meaningful to you. Then the third sign to know that something is your Ikigai is that you experience a state of flow. So flow is what we feel when we are very deeply connected to something. Yes? So what is the state of flow? For instance, when you are doing something that is very meaningful for you, then time passes like nothing. So maybe you have been 1 hour doing something and you feel it was a minute. And then you forget even the place where you are, and you feel that you and the activity you are doing is the same thing, like a kind of meditation. And in the last part, I would say that if you are looking for your Ikigai and you feel very lost in life, remember your childhood. Because when we were children, we were naturally connected to our passions, to our instincts, and you look at children and you see that they are very spontaneous. So if we remember how we were when we were children, what we loved, which things were our dreams, it's another way to connect to Ikigai.
Thank you so much. And I also love the insight that an Ikigai does not have to be this grand thing. That, your Ikigai could be, I will make the best aloo parathas for people I love. Or it could be, I will help 2 people because I like helping people, and I will help people every week, or something like that. Whatever you find fulfillment in. And what you're saying is that the path to that is possible, but it does take a little quietness, it does take a little effort to connect with yourself that deeply. Throwing it open to the audience, and we can see lots of hands coming up for questions. We will start from the front because they've been sitting on the cold floor.
You mentioned not reading the news. So in order to follow our Ikigai, is it suggested that we isolate ourselves, especially in the world that we live in today? Is it suggested that we isolate ourselves in order to create a path, to follow our passion, to follow our purpose, to make this world a better place? And is it irresponsible to not do that?
I think you can be very responsible. Not follow. When I say not following the news, I mean not following them every day at every hour. That's what happens today. We connect to Twitter, and every hour we know what is happening in the world. And if you have your attention always out of yourself, you have no space for your own findings. So maybe it would be advisable once a day, a couple of times a week, you can read the news. But if you are always connected to the news also, you will be easily manipulated, because every means, in Spain there are 4 main newspapers. You read the same news in one of Barcelona and in one of Madrid, and you are aware that they live in parallel realities. So if you want to preserve your purity of mind and your energy, because if you get filled with negativity, you feel energy and you feel hope, then I think you can have some connection with the news, but it's good to do a lot of diet to create a space for yourself.
Wonderful. May I see the hands, please? Yeah. Who's got, second question from there, and then we'll go that side, and then to the lady in the center.
Well, sometimes we don't know if a particular activity is our Ikigai, whether we have identified it or not. For example, in my case, I've been trying to get down to write a book for the last 2 to 3 years, but then I start, and then the process is difficult, and then I give up for some reason. And again, after a few months, I start again. So is it a case where writing is not my Ikigai, or is it that I have not accepted it?
No, it's very normal what happens to you, especially in writing. There is an author from Germany that he's not very popular in India, because when I mention his name, very few people know it. It's Hermann Hesse. Maybe here it's a kind of public that know that, but when I was commenting that with journalists, most of them didn't know. Yes, exactly, and with Siddhartha, it happened to him the same that you are experiencing now. I wrote a biography of Hermann Hesse when I was 30, and looking at his life, his biography, when he wrote Siddhartha, he got totally blocked, totally stuck. He came to the half of the story, to the first part, and he didn't know how to continue. And then what he did was putting this book aside, writing other things. Then he started writing poems, painting aquarelle, giving talks, doing other things. And 2 years after, I think, he took the book again, and then he was mature enough to prepare the second part. So when we are doing something, we don't have to get obsessed with that idea. If it doesn't flow very easily, we can keep it aside, and maybe one day while we are dreaming, the key idea comes and we can continue, but we cannot force it. So it's totally normal what you are experiencing. It's typical from an artist.
So,
Sorry, who has the mic?
me here.
Oh, sorry, thank you.
So Ogilvy research says people don't do what's good for them. This is their research. And their implication is that advertisers must show them what's right. But my question is, what are there tools to reject these impulses? Like, and procrastinate what you must do, which eventually makes you unhappy. Actually, if you keep procrastinating, you know what to do, but you don't. So are there tools to actually stop procrastination?
Yes, they are tools, and I think in India you have the sources of these tools, because actually what Japan is offering to the world through the Zen meditation, what America is offering through mindfulness by John Kabat-Zinn. It has the source in India, and the first meditators were people like Buddha and maybe before. So all these things, like procrastination, this is a very important point, what you said, because maybe the enemy number one of our Ikigai is procrastinating, because we are always on a hurry, and we think that there are always things that are more important than this dream that you want to develop. Then you say, okay, I am too busy today, maybe tomorrow. And tomorrow you say, okay, now I don't have time, now I am stressed, now I am too tired. Let's do it next week. And in this way, you will never do it that. So I think the tool you need for that is to master your mind and to say, even I feel I am not doing well, attending to my passion, doing it now, you go against this impulse of doing some obligation, and you do that as if you were meditating in front of a wall. So the science of habits, it was said before that when we do something 21 days, we incorporate these habits. Nowadays, they say it can be 2 months, but it's okay. What today can be not natural, can be difficult, when you do it every day, after 1 month, after 2 months, it becomes a habit, and then you put this priority in the center of your life. So we must fight against ourselves a little bit, but then we reshape our brain.
I'd just like to see hands for how many people want to ask questions. Okay. Can we go down the middle? Just take a look around. We'll take questions from these two ladies, then move to that side and to the back. And then hopefully come back and sweep the sides.
You said that at times we try to keep ourselves busy. We try to listen to stuff. We try to read something to avoid the uncomfortable questions. But what does one do when in isolations you try to address the questions and they penetrate to an extent that they don't let you do the stuff that you actually want to do?
Who doesn't let you do the stuff that you want to do?
He said that we try to keep ourselves busy enough to not let the uncomfortable questions creep in. But what happens when you let those questions creep in and they don't let you do the stuff that you're supposed to do?
What she says is when the questions themselves make you uncomfortable and then you can't do what you want to do.
Yes, I think we shouldn't demand too much of ourselves at the same time. So it's normal, for instance, I can put a practical example. Imagine that I am working on a bank. It's a curious thing that in Spain, the 2-3 most important psychologists who write books and give a lot of conference, all of them were working in the banking system. So it can happen that maybe you are doing a kind of life, and then one day you have a coffee with yourself, and you discover that you hate that. So it can be very overwhelming that, because you cannot change everything from today to tomorrow. So I think you shouldn't be too strict with yourself, and then put a little step in front of you to say, okay, maybe this is not the kind of life that I want to follow. This is not something that I can solve in 1 day, in 1 week, in 1 month, but I want to start giving little steps to change it. And that's what the Japanese call kaizen, that is 1 step every day is more powerful than a big effort in a short time. So if every day you are improving 1%, in 100 days you improve 100%. So when we feel that we are lost, thank you. When we feel that we are lost, that this is not what we want to do, that we are leaving a big mistake, don't panic. Let's think in something small that we can put in our lives in the good direction. And if we follow this thread, if we follow this guideline, then in a little time, in some months, we can start seeing big changes in our lives.
Greetings here. Can we be a part-time Ikigai, like most of the section of the day? We really don't do anything in our day section. So it is really too important to figure out those section of the day. And my second question is like, sometimes we feel like nothing. Neither happiness is there and nor the sadness is there. So is it okay in the daytime? Thanks.
This one? Could you repeat the first question, just the first part of your question?
Okay.
Could you
First
repeat?
question was like, can we be a Ikigai? Like most of the section of the day, we really don't do anything. Is it really important to
can you
figure out
be a
these
part-time Ikigai?
Yes, of course. Ikigai can be part-time because, for instance, if now you give birth to a child, you will be mother of this child or father of this child, and this will take many hours from you, and you cannot say, I am not going to grow my child because I have an Ikigai. You cannot say that. So sometimes, very often, or if you live with an old grandfather or grandmother and this person depends on you, you are not quitting this responsibility because you have an Ikigai. So there will be many situations in life in which Ikigai will be a part-time job. And it's not a problem because if we examine the lives of some very, very good artists, let's think of Franz Kafka. Franz Kafka was a German author living in Prague. He had a job, 8 hours a day job. He was a lawyer in an insurance company, Assicurazione Generali, that exists nowadays. And he was working 8 hours, came home, did a nap of 2-3 hours to refresh his mind, and then he was writing 4 or 5 hours, and he was very happy with that. So Ikigai as a part-time job is totally possible, and financially, in the beginning, is even advisable. And the second thing, thank you. And the second thing you were asking, that's true that sometimes we feel in the middle of many things. We are not happy, we are not unhappy. We are not motivated, but we are not totally dismotivated. And this is a state of mind that in psychology is called apathy. I don't know if it's right in English. And this is like being a bit asleep. So it means maybe that we are not risking to go up and down, because when you enter into a creative process, writing a book, creating paintings, starting a business, you are going to feel emotions like this, like a Russian mountain. So sometimes we stay in the middle because we don't risk to have these up and downs with our emotions. And I think it's okay to live like that, to feel like that, but when something important comes to your life, you will come out of this comfort zone. It's like when you fall in love. You can be very quiet with your life, you can be unattached to this topic, but when the right person comes, you fall in love and you go into chaos, and God bless this chaos.
Good evening, Kurt. My question is when you're actually on the, my question is when you're kind of beginning the journey to explore your Ikigai, isn't the journey lonely, number one, and how do you manage it in the current compulsive pseudo-social interface? Pseudo-social interface.
Yes, first question you put is very important. If Ikigai is something to be done alone or in company. I would say that for every big thing one person wants to do in life, we need people who help. For instance, in the beginning, when I started writing, I didn't have any teacher, I didn't have a publisher, I didn't have anybody who could help me to find my way, but I chose 2 friends that by that time they were my best friends, and they compromised with me, to read every chapter that I wrote. So when I was writing, I felt that I was not alone. I was writing for someone. And if I had a compromise to give the new chapter a Sunday, and I didn't send it by email, this friend called me and said, hey, what are you doing? You said you were going to give that. So even these people who were not mentors were helping me to follow my Ikigai. So when we start something, it's good to have people around us who believe in our potentials, who believe in our talents, and who can give some support, even if it's only emotional support. Then, in your way, if you find somebody that can be a professor, that can be another person who already got what you are trying to, then it's even better. So, actually, you need to put a lot of hours for yourself. You need a lot of energy. But if you have some angels around you, it's easier. And the second question was something of the social...
Yeah, I think we'll have to move on from that because we have time for just one last question. There's a lady towards the front. To everyone who hasn't had your questions answered, Francis will be signing books later, and I hope you'll have the chance to talk to him.
I think he meant the risk of following your Ikigai is that you change. Yes. And when you change, sometimes the people around you is not comfortable with that, because people are used to what we are now. So if I change totally, and I start doing another kind of things, and I quit doing things that I was doing until now, they will feel that they don't know me. And there is a very nice allegory put by John DeMartini, that's an author, an American author of self-help. It says, when you are trying to cross the river to the other side, that's what happens when we follow Ikigai. There will be two dangers. So every time that we abandon, we give up our normal life to do something very different, it's like somebody throwing himself on a river and trying to swim until the other side. Then he said, the two dangers that you are going to confront, first, is that your people in your side will shout, where do you go? This is dangerous. The water is too cold. Come back. Because they feel more comfortable that you stay the same. And the second danger is yourself, that when you are in the middle of the river, you think, oh, it is uncomfortable, it is too cold, I don't know where I am going to come back. And what John DeMartini advises is, when you are crossing the river of change, first cross it. And when you are on the other side, let's see what happens.
That is a beautiful way to put it. Thank you. One question if you speak very fast.
Yeah, it's going to be short. Is ultimate happiness and Ikigai or purpose the same thing? And if not, how do we merge the two?
I would say happiness is a result of Ikigai. This Chinese philosopher, Confucius, explained it in a very beautiful way. He said, find an activity that you love and you won't work a single day in your life. So when you are doing what you are good at, when you are doing something that is meaningful, that makes you grow, and that is useful for the world, then your self-esteem goes high. And because of that, the happiest people I have seen in my life is the people who do exactly what they want, and the people who, by this doing their Ikigai, help other people and give beauty to the world.
Francesc Miralles, thank you so much, and thank you so much for spending time with us and for your wonderful company. I hope those of you who would like to sign books, Francis will be at the book signing tent shortly. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for your nice interview.
Thank you all for your
Thank you to all you.
forbearance and your patience. Please join me in thanking Nilanjana S and Francesc Miralles. If you would like to have your book signed, please make your way out to the left. The book signing tent is near Mughal tent.
Purity in creation. Introducing XL6,